Right. Okay, well, I think we'll make a start. There's still a few people joining in. So, media is red hot with ChatGPT just now. I've been playing around with it, and it seems to think I've invented a new cipher, which was new to me, and it kind of lied in a few places. So, how do you see ChatGPT evolving? Is it a good thing? What will it do to education, democracy? How will it change our lives?
So I think it's really interesting questions, and we are just starting to see the answer to this as people start playing with it, right? So you all should know that ChatGPT is what's known as a large language model. It is not intelligent, it is not clever, it is not smart, it actually doesn't know anything. The only thing it knows is basically what word comes next. So it is the most sophisticated parrot in existence. It is listened to, ingested basically the entire internet, and it can predict what word comes next. And English is such a redundant language that what word comes next is, understandable and, usually pretty clever. So that is what ChatGPT is. It's really interesting because it says a couple things. It says about how sophisticated these language models have become, and kind of how rote and unsophisticated most human communication is. The fact that it can mimic a human so easily just by knowing what word likely comes next kind of shows how predictable we are as a species. And that's actually really interesting. I think it has a lot of implications for society, security in particular. Right? The ability to mimic humans convincingly is powerful. And not just because you can do it, right? I mean, like ChatGPT can write a letter to the editor in my name. So what? I can write that letter. Right? And when you think about AI in general, not just ChatGPT, think about where it changes speed, scale, scope, or sophistication. And then where those changes in degree make a change in kind. Right? So what? It can write a letter to the editor. But can it write 1 million letters to the editor? Can I write 1 million blog posts? Right? The Internet Research Agency spent something like $1 million a month and 100+ people to write propaganda to influence our election in 2016. Right? If we can automate that, that's a change. Not that Russia could do it because they could already do it, but everyone can do it now. Right? It democratizes that capability because it made it so cheap. And how does that affect democracy? We're already seeing examples of it being hooked up to text chat windows, and it argues with Wells Fargo about a refund. That's awesome, right? Because I don't have to do it. But again, how does that change the dynamic of text communication? Are we going to start having bots arguing with bots? Probably. And how will that make things different? I'm in my class teaching, and ChatGPT can do the homework, and it does a credible job. It gets a B+. I put the assignments in just to check, and what I told my class is, you shouldn't use it. If you do, you're kind of wasting your money here at Harvard. But I can't stop it. I'm not going to be able to detect it. We are seeing CNET, for example, using ChatGPT to produce explainers. So it can't do current events. This particular language model can't do current events because it was trained statically and then put out to the world. I mean, certainly you could imagine a large language model that ingests the news every day and in a sense prioritizes it so it's able to do current events, but this one can't. So it has been used to write explainers, and CNET did that. And it made mistakes. It made some pretty bad mistakes. Now, whose fault is that? And to me, having ChatGPT write an explainer for your news website is the same thing as having an intern do it. They're going to do a mediocre job, and someone has to read it and edit it and fact check it, just like an intern. So there's no difference. You probably save money in interns, but interns were free, so who knows? Really, when I look at AI and democracy, it isn't the large language models. It's other aspects of AI. And I did a piece in the New York Times a couple of months ago on using AI for lobbying. Not to write the lobbying letters, because people can do that, but to figure out where the pressure points are, like where lobbying makes sense, and then crafting a lobbying strategy. I'm also writing a piece on what I call micro legislation. It's small bits of law that benefit somebody. Can an AI be trained to create those? To look at the body of law and see where the current loopholes are and the places for new loopholes. Right? So this is where, to me, AI makes a huge difference. And again, speed, scale, scope, sophistication. Look for those changes. Not just taking the place of a human, but doing it differently in a way that changes the underlying thing. I'm going to pull up the URL for the op-ed so I can put it in chat. I could spend the entire time talking about AI, but hopefully we have some other questions.
Yeah. Well, I saw an example where it actually managed to find code bugs in C, Java,
That's right.
You name it.
So finding bugs is different. That's not a large language model. We are training AIs to find vulnerabilities in software. I think this is really interesting. It kind of makes sense, like looking through a huge amount of data, searching for patterns. I think this is a potential game changer for software security, because it's not very good at it yet, but it's getting better, and it will get really good eventually. So you can imagine. Yes, the attackers can use this, right? The attackers can take a bit of code, look for the bugs and attack systems. But the defenders can use it too. Right? The defenders can put their code through this system before it's released and find like all of the bugs. You can imagine this being built into the compiler. So we can envision a world where software vulnerabilities are a thing of the past, which is super weird. So yeah, that is an interesting application for an AI, something that makes sense, and I think something that will definitely change security.
Yeah.
But that's not a large language model. Large language models are writing code, because it turns out that a lot of code is what comes next. And it's doing an okay job of it, not a great job. I want to post a video that I liked, someone talking about. They had ChatGPT try to write some code, and how it worked and where it failed, and kind of what he thought it might mean. So I am going to find that while you ask the next question.
Yeah. And I think you talked about undetectable there's a paper that talks about undetectable backdoors. I think it was Shafi who published that paper. I haven't had time to read it in any great detail, but do you think it's almost impossible to not have backdoors in machine learning models?
Right now, it seems like the answer is no. Hang on, let me enter this link. All right, the link is in there. Right now, I think the answer is no. That these systems are vulnerable in the training data, and they're vulnerable in very subtle ways we don't fully understand. A lot of really weird stuff. The adversarial machine learning is the subdiscipline, and there's super weird stuff that makes no sense. There are vulnerabilities that are common across different machine learning systems that are completely different in how they were created and how they work. And that makes no sense. That makes zero sense, but it seems to be true. So we are still learning a lot about the security of these systems, how they work, how they are trained, the actual machine learning construct. So it is not an obvious answer to that question. Shafi's work, I saw it, you'll read it, it's very theoretical, and it works in theory. It's hard to tell if it'll make sense in the real world, but that's okay. I mean, that's really the point of theory. So right now, it looks like these things are incredibly vulnerable. But I think we are in the early years of understanding sort of how they work. So that's where we're going to get.
And obviously with the Ukrainian war just now, there was this expectation. We had seen a lot of probing of the Ukraine from other nations before the war, but we're not hearing as much about that now. Why do you think cyber attacks aren't quite as to the forefront now?
So I think there's a bunch of reasons. I wrote a blog post on this like yesterday, so let me pull it up. Yeah, so it is yesterday. Aspen Institute published a really good paper on cyber attacks as part of the war in Ukraine, and it's worth reading. When I'm asked, I usually give 4 reasons why cyber attacks were not as successful as everyone thought they would be. One, setting up a cyber attack takes time, right? You have to prep it and figure out how it works. You think about Stuxnet, it took years. Putin was very secretive about his plans. So he didn't alert the commanders to get things ready. So I think that was one of the reasons. 2, they're generally more effective before the war starts. Right? You know, they're good in that what Ben Buchanan calls the gray zone between peace and war. They're less useful after you're bombing, after you're shooting. 3, I think Putin was concerned about cyber attacks spilling over into other countries and expanding the war. I think that's a real reasonable thing to be concerned about. And 4, Ukrainian defenses are actually pretty good. They were well trained. They were aided by the Americans and the British. They were aided by companies like Microsoft. And they did a good job in defending. And there were cyber attacks in the run-up that were successful. And the Aspen paper makes another point that there's a lot of propaganda like that Ukraine is good about not talking about successful attacks. So they are projecting more defense than they have for propaganda reasons, which is a really interesting argument. And I think something that's actually pretty important. Hang on, I'm putting more links in the chat.
Great. Well, I have a Flipper 0 now, and I hope to be demonstrating it quite soon. And I noticed you published a blog on the hacking of traffic lights, I think from the Opicom transmitter. Do you think this could be a general thing? Could you see traffic lights all over the world being...
No, I mean, it's illegal to do that. You get arrested, put in jail. No, it'll not be a thing. You know, so no, I actually don't think so. You know, hobbyists don't like crashing actual cars. Like, you know, killing people gets you arrested.
Yeah.
So this will, no, I do not think this will be a thing.
In cameras the size of a grain of salt,
certainly a
do you
thing.
think that will be used in surveillance in the future?
That is a very odd question, because how could the answer be no?
And in your latest book, you say that kids are natural hackers. So is that a good thing? Should we be encouraging them?
I certainly think so. I'm a big fan of teaching the hacking mindset. Hang on, I want to send a couple of links. Hang on, people are writing questions.
Yep.
All right, so do that. Let me put a link into that Aspen study that I just mentioned, and I'll be back to answer questions live. Kind of doing live and chat's hard, but we can manage.
Great. So do you want to go to the questions now and
yeah, I mean, all right. You know, what was your last question? I'll go to the questions here.
So in your latest book, you do talk about hacking examples. In your research, what was the best example of a hack that you found?
I have so many great examples. I have them from sports. I have them from religion. Religious laws have been hacked since the beginning. Have them from casino gambling. Yeah, the one I often like to talk about is from Formula One racing. So in the mid-70s, one team shows up on the Formula One racing track with a six-wheeled car. And everyone looks at this and says, you can't have a six-wheeled car. And they pull out the rule book and they say, show me. And it turns out the rules were silent on the number of wheels a car could have. Because who could have imagined that a car wouldn't have four wheels? It was a great hack. Eventually it was patched. About a few years later, the body in charge of Formula racing, they have a French name, they're a French body, amended the rules so you can't have more than or less than four wheels in your car. That was my favorite story. There are other good stories about hacking sumptuary laws. So Italy, also in Japan, sumptuary laws are designed basically to prevent arms races among the wealthy. Right? My banquet has to be better than your banquet. So they would put laws in place like to limit the number of courses that were legally allowed at a banquet, so they wouldn't bankrupt themselves outdoing each other. A really interesting system. So these laws were immediately hacked. It turns out that the way courses were defined, they didn't have a meat, they didn't count as a course. So you've had a bunch of vegetable courses. It turns out if you stuffed a meat into another meat, it only counted as one course. So things like the turducken were originally ways to hack sumptuary laws. So those are two examples.
Yep. Okay, would you like to go through the questions now?
I will. Let's look at the question. Okay. So there's a question about Section 230. Right, and it's being hearings by the Supreme Court right now. What we know about those hearings is that the Supreme Court justices are completely and utterly confused about how the internet works. They have no freaking clue what to do. They're terrified of doing something that will break things. So my guess is they're probably not going to do anything. I think all of their kids have said, don't you dare break Snapchat or whatever the hell they're using these days. I think reform is required. I mean, the original intent to protect publishers, to protect me and my blog from stuff you post in the comments. That's the goal, right? You post something inflammatory in my comments and they can't sue me. That's the intent. It's been expanded to be much, much greater, to protect big internet companies in ways that were not intended. So I do think scaling back is important, but it's hard, right? So if you read the EFF sent a brief to the Supreme Court on this issue, and they made the point, basically what they said is, look, what's the difference between Facebook recommendation engine that orders the stuff you see on your feed and a search engine? Like, technically, what's the difference? Both are looking at everything out there and presenting you the things that it thinks is relevant to you. So if you block Facebook from curating a feed, you are killing search engines. That's really interesting. And shows that the ramifications of these changes are very subtle, and that it's going to be hard to sort of thread the needle between, we want people to be able to post comments to my blog without me being sued, otherwise blogs don't exist, and that companies that are in a sense publishing content, Facebook, has some responsibility for the content they publish. I don't know where that line is. So I think that, but it's a really interesting question. All right, there's a question about SBOM. I'm a big fan of SBOM, that's software bill of materials. The notion that when you get a piece of software, you have a list of the libraries that are in it. I think that's incredibly important. US industry hates it. The last time the Department of Commerce came up with this idea and floated a serious proposal, it was literally nuked from orbit. No one wants it, but I think it's phenomenally important for security. There are ways we're seeing it done adversarially, which is interesting. there are now companies that will take code, right? Take object code, pull it out of a drone, and reverse engineer what libraries are in it. And I think that's really interesting, that we're starting to see adversarial SBOMs. And the company I know in particular is trying to do this in a way to let its customers sort of know what to buy and what not. But they have a two-sided market, because they go to the company, they go to the software makers and say, look, we reverse engineer this SBOM. We're going to tell everyone this is right. Feel free to correct it if you want. But if you don't, this is what we're doing. So it might be a way to sort of back into the disclosure by having like the non-disclosure be even more embarrassing. So sort of watch this space for that. I think that's really kind of interesting. Someone asked about a detector for ChatGPT. Think of this as an arms race. Yeah, and if you look at the detector, it's actually terrible. It's accurate 3/4 of the time, but so it correctly detects ChatGPT output 3/4 of the time. It mistakenly identifies human output as ChatGPT 10% of the time. Right? I cannot use a detector that will mistakenly accuse 10% of my class of cheating. That's not going to work. Right? There's no way I can use that. And I think this arms race is not one that the defender can win here. So, I mean, I think the detection's a good research, but I just don't think it is something that we should count on as something that's going to get us out of this problem. All right. Someone asked me about the AI breaking a post-quantum algorithm. That's a really crappy story out there. They didn't break the algorithm. It was a side channel attack. So it's looking at the implementation. The AI aspect is interesting, not critical. The algorithm is not broken. The algorithm is fine. So I actually have a blog post. I guess it's coming out on Monday because it's not posted yet. So it's not really a thing. Definitely go and pull the paper. Don't rely on, I think it was Computer World. Don't rely on that article. That article's a bad article. So it is worth looking at the actual paper. All right, hang on. There's a long question from Ubiquitous Tim. So I'm a big fan of personal AI agents. To me, this is where ChatGPT has real value. Can I train a large language model on me? Or other AI agents? Can I train an agent on my stuff? I mean, right now, these are being owned by big companies, and they're not being trained for your interest. So it's Google, it's Microsoft, it's OpenAI, these big billion-dollar companies. And they're being trained in general. But I kind of like an agent that looks at all my stuff and like knows, what kind of seat I like on an airplane. And, maybe it could first draft one of my essays. If it knows my style, it knows how I reason, it knows the points I like to make. I mean, I will have to go in and edit it, of course. But, so there we see the good thing about AI. I want an AI. I want someone who is not very articulate, not a good writer, to be able to use assistive technology to create a letter to their congressperson. That's awesome. Assistive technology for people, I'm in favor of. Right? What I don't want is a million letters to the editor created by fake personas. So the more we can, and this is where I think Solid, another something I'm involved in, helps. Right? Solid is a protocol for distributed data, that all of your data is in your pod, not in various places. If all of my data is in one place, I could conceivably train an AI on it. And that seems very, very powerful and very important. All right, I see 11. There's a lot of questions coming, so I'm going to start going through a little bit quicker. Wow, Stuart has an interesting question. I'm not sure I know the answer to, right? Yeah, and this is the way to think of it, right? How does a change in degree make a change in kind? This question, if you're not in that part of the chat, is how will the availability of basically how will an audit log of things that happened in the past change how we operate in the present? It does, right? I mean, that's the whole point of big data. Save everything, analyze it, and then do things different in the present and future. So that is changing things. I don't know how, but that feels important. Right? That data is not now being used to remember the past, but it's being used to predict the future, to react to potential future things. I think it's a really important social change, and I'm not sure where it lands. Question about regulation and AI, a lot of it. I mean, the fact that these models are being designed by tech billionaires, I think is very scary. Here, the EU is much far ahead of the United States. The EU is really looking at AI regulations, but definitely, I think we need regulations. Even something simple as the fact that it's just plagiarizing us all is a problem. So I'm less concerned about tampering, more concerned about natural skewing and just how it being misused. I mean, if you go to a website for your bank, your airline, and there's a chat window to chat with an agent, should they disclose if you're chatting with an AI and not with a human? Probably. Right? But even disclosure, seems important. Right? If a decision is made that affects you by an AI, whether you get accepted to college or get government assistance or get a bank loan, and should the decider have to disclose that an AI decided and a human did not? And are you allowed some explanation? Under EU law, you are. Right? You're entitled to an explanation. That feels important. Question about Section 702. I don't know if you covered this in class. This is a part of U.S. law that allows the NSA to spy on U.S. soil. It is up for reauthorization this year. So there's likely to be a fight about this. In the end, the NSA is going to get what they want, is my guess, even though I think they shouldn't. But that's where I think that's going to land. There's been a fight every 5 years since this started. Will the chat of a record of it be available if the session is over? I have no idea. That's Bill's thing. Question about, is information technology good on its own? I think we are well beyond, like, computers are good. We go back and forth between this sort of this utopia thinking and this, moral panic thinking. And it's certainly, very much in the middle. And these technologies are both good and bad. And I like to think we have a more sophisticated way of thinking about them now. I don't know if that's uniformly true, but it feels important that we get beyond this, technology is good, technology is bad, or even technology is neutral. Right? Technology changes affordances. It makes things easier. It makes things harder. And changing affordances has cascading effects into whatever it is we're changing. Right? So the fact that it is easier for someone to publish, it's easier for people to find each other, right? These have cascading effects, and they are both good and bad. So I like a more nuanced view of technology. I like to think we have one. Another Formula One statement. Questions on the where the online safety bill will land. I don't think I know. That's a UK bill, right?
It's
Yeah.
a UK
I'm
bill,
not following the details. I mean, UK is often terrible about at passing laws that protect people. They usually pass laws that, let the police run roughshod over people. And I just don't know UK politics enough to even begin to predict. I have no trouble predicting where US bills land, let alone doing that in other countries. Question why Microsoft is integrating ChatGPT into search, I have no idea. I think there's largely just this land grab going on, and no one knows what they're doing, and they're just doing things. I mean, it makes no sense to put ChatGPT into search. It just really doesn't. You want search to produce web pages. It's very different when you ask ChatGPT a question and you want facts. So I am not a fan of that. Hang on, I want to get a prompt. No, wait, where is it? It's right there. Question was, do you have any go-to resources on developing or improving a hacker's mindset? I can mention my new book that just came out 2 weeks ago on that very question. It's interesting. I try to teach this. I teach at the Kennedy School, so I teach policy students, teach public policy students. And I do try to instill a hacker's mindset. And I do it through exercises. Like, how would you steal lunch in the cafeteria? We talk about it. I make them cheat on a test. So I do a bunch of things. It is something I think we are born with. I think, right? Something Bill asked me about. I think kids are natural hackers. And because they don't understand the rules and how they work. And I think thinking that way is valuable as a something for us to do. So I like teaching it. Plus, everyone gets to cheat on tests, and they think that's great. All right, zero trust architecture. So that's a terrible phrase for what that is. Basically, it is continual trust. So the old way is that there's a door with a door lock, right? An account with a password, and once you're in, you're in. Once you get into the building through the door by opening the lock, you're in. You have your run of the place, right? Once you know my password, get into my account, you can do whatever you want. In zero trust architecture, we kind of try to build detection and authentication systems all throughout, right? So maybe you get access to a bank account, but if you are suddenly transfer $50,000 to an account in Moldavia, there's going to be an extra authentication step, right? If you do something weird, if you do something important. And so that's the idea of continual trust that is ratcheted up or down depending on your actions. That's what zero trust is. It's really powerful, I think important. It's a terrible name for it because it is not zero trust. But that is the name that we are stuck with. What should we train our children to learn about hacking? Daughter age 7. Wow, I don't know. I just think we encourage it. I mean, kids will do it, just naturally. Just don't punish them for it. I mean, teach them between breaking the rules and not breaking the rules. But I don't think you should be punished for hacking. All right, what do we got here? Yeah, ChatGPT is being used to write malicious code. Surprise. I mean, every tool can be used for good or bad. That's the way tools are. A restaurant can feed both regular people and bank robbers. You can't stop that. And the copyright violations are interesting, right? I mean, GitHub being sued for using non-licensed code. We're seeing the same thing with DALL-E, right? The art generation AI was trained on copyrighted art. Is that allowed? Probably not. What do we want to do about it? I don't know. We need to figure it out. All right. Neil asks if I have any thoughts on what the future of working computer security might look like. Then has another post with the tiniest text I have ever seen in my entire life in a meeting chat. And I'm totally not going to read it because there's no way my eyes can focus on that. But I will answer the first question. I think the future of computer security looks a lot like the present. It is very human-centric because they're human adversaries. I think we will hopefully have more AI assistants doing some of the more routine work, but I don't think that means we're out of a job. I think that means that we are freed up to do the more important things. There's an enormous skill shortage in cybersecurity. 250,000 jobs unfilled, crazy numbers. So there's no chance of us running out of jobs, having people anytime soon. But I would like it if some of the routine things could be done with an AI. And here's where AIs have real value, not in replacing people, but in assisting people. It's the collaboration of human AI that is always the best. Now, you know that the best AI can beat the best human at chess, but a mediocre human paired with a mediocre AI can beat both the best AI and also the best human. Right? It's one plus the other gives you the best outcomes. So I think we're going to have a lot more AI assisted jobs, but the expertise is incredibly valuable and will be needed for a long time. These systems aren't getting any better, right? They're getting less secure and they're becoming more important. So, we have to worry about them still. All right, person with an unpronounceable login asked about Facebook introducing a fee. So Facebook and Twitter both did this in like the space of a week. Right? Twitter said they're charging for two-factor authentication via phone, and Facebook is charging for valid identities. I think this is an extremely bad trend. I don't want security to be a luxury good. I want security to be the thing you get because you get it. You charge for features, charge for functionality, charge for nice things to have. Don't charge for security. Jen Easterly had a really good tweet storm on that. See if I can find it. Give me a second. Because I think she did a really good job explaining it. She is she runs CISA here in the United States.
And I think
I'm not finding it. Oh well, pity. If you can find it on Twitter, it's really good.
Yeah,
go find it.
They've also dropped SMS, which is fine for us who knows how to use the Microsoft Authenticator, but it's not so easy for the general public to be able to use it.
The way it goes, right? But you make it work, right? So here at Harvard, we use Duo. I don't know what you use, right? But I have it on my phone, and when I log in the Harvard network, every liberal arts student here is using Duo. So you could do it. This isn't hard. Question about trust frameworks, identity proposed by different governments. Both good and bad. There's definitely room in our world for government run identification. Right, driver's license in the U.S. National ID cards. So they have value. So I want to see it digitally. Right, India Andhar turns out to be a really powerful thing, and it's done a lot of good for that country. There are reasons why you don't want that for everything. Maybe open up your wallet today, you will find lots of different identity documents. Right? Some governments, some not. And I think that's going to be the future. Right? That same kind of multiplicity of systems. And that feels like what we want to do. Someone says that surely the competitive advantage of humans over AI is the essential quality of humans do the unexpected. So all of you go to ChatGPT, type something in, and watch it do the unexpected. Turns out the unexpected is totally easy to do. I mean, bacteria do the unexpected sometimes. I mean, we are an easily surprised species. Someone asked about an arms race between AI emulating real people and AI detecting that. And I think, yes, that is very much an arms race. I mean, and that kind of arms race is normal. Right? It's spam versus spam detection, or deep fake versus deep fake detection. So yes, we will see that arms race. And I fear that the edge is on the side of the attacker there, that the detection will always be a generation behind. Just like, and we see that in spam. New techniques appear. Takes a few days for the spam detectors to figure out what's going on. It'll be like that. Hopefully, it'll be fast. But I think there is an arms race. It's not one that the defenders can win. Do I think NFTs will morph into a form of national ID card? God, I hope not. I hope if the NFTs just die in a fiery death and no one thinks about them ever again. They are pretty much one of the stupidest things ever. I mean, the whole notion of having an ID card NFT misunderstands both national ID cards and NFTs and blockchain. Why would you ever use a blockchain for that? The whole point of a national ID card is it's certified by an authority. Duh. Don't get me started. I'm not going to talk about blockchain. You can read what I wrote. Yeah, and the next question is about blockchain. No. Blockchain does nothing useful. Stop. Don't even do it. We cannot transition digital identity model to leverage zero-knowledge proofs in blockchain. And if we could, we wouldn't, because it's stupid. And if governments push back, it's because they should. Do you think the West is ready for programmable, another blockchain question, programmable central bank digital currencies? So first of all, if the central bank issues it, it's not a blockchain, right? So who cares? They can use the data, they can use the Merkle hash tree, they can use the hash chain. These are all decades-old technologies, or not. Nobody actually cares, right? The blockchain is not how it works because it's issued by an authority. Programmable, hopefully not, because that's actually kind of dumb. You need to be an expert in both the law and in code to avoid making mistakes, and mistakes are fatal. So this is not something that we actually want. I think banks are looking at digital currencies, and I think that's fine. And in a sense, credit cards are digital currency. It works just fine, right? PayPal, these are all digital currencies. So sure, let a government issue it. As long as it's not a blockchain, everything is good. Question about AI forcing to change existing teaching practices. I think this is worth thinking about. I mean, technologies that force us to change teaching practices, right? The pocket calculator in the 1980s, Google, and the internet in general. Like Google Translate has changed the way schools grade language exams. And this will be another one. I mean, so what? We can figure this out. I mean, it turns out the number of, I never give a test in class, like a closed book exam, basically because the number of times in your career you will be asked to regurgitate random facts solely from memory is like 0. So it's unrealistic. So yes, my students can use ChatGPT to do their assignments. And I tell them that you're responsible for the output. If in fact you push a button and hand it in, it's an incredible waste of a Harvard. Harvard's not cheap. You're wasting your education. But the world is going to be AI-assisted text. So live in that world. That's okay. I don't mind. Just like the world is pocket calculators. Making people use a slide rule doesn't make any sense. So I think we need to teach and test in the milieu of the tools of the era and not pretend they don't exist. So I'm okay with that. A lot of people here are panicking. What will the response to ransomware be? Targeted attacks on foreign soil? Looks like so far not much. Right? Some US, other countries are getting pretty good at disrupting ransomware gangs. Now, we're less good at when countries do it, like in North Korea. But we are disrupting them. I think that will continue. I'm not sure if there's any other change besides that. U.S. government says companies should be more responsible for their own cybersecurity. think that's true, but you're not going to get that until there's actual liabilities. Until there's real penalties, companies are going to make the rational decision. I mean, we live in a market economy where the companies will maximize their profits. And if that means screwing your security, they'll do that, unless they will get sued or otherwise fined if they do. So you can't just say that companies have more responsibility. You have to force it. You have to force it monetarily, because companies respond to changes in their profit and loss spreadsheet, right? And the cost of security has to become cheaper than the cost of insecurity. And you do that by raising the cost of insecurity. You do that through fines or through class action lawsuits, any ways to make it cost more. So yes, I think it's a great idea, but you need to make it work. You can't just pretend it works. Who owns the AI generated voice painting code for licensing? Nobody freaking knows. We're still figuring this out. Where will budget for IT security come from? It comes from the place all budget comes from, right? Your bank. And this speaks to the economic issue. We're not going to see an improvement until the companies are forced to pay for it. And eventually it comes through higher prices. You pay for airline safety in your plane ticket. You pay for automobile safety in the purchase price of the automobile. So yeah, if we want the routers to be more secure, they might cost 2 or 3 times as much. And we might hate that, but we have no alternative. This stuff isn't free. And whatever the route is, the money comes from society, right? If the government pays for it, it comes from our taxes. If the companies pay for it, it comes from the purchase price. That's the way it goes. And we just have to recognize that security is something worth paying for, or recognize that it's not worth paying for and live with insecurity. Those are our choices. We don't get it for free. This is a closed system. Yeah, right. Question: if Elon is charging for security at Twitter, what if he starts doing it at Tesla? Right? And now he certainly charges for features, but he might charge for security. I don't think it's a good idea. But if the government doesn't stop him, he'll do what's best for his profit, not what's best for society. How far are we away from general AI engines? Decades and decades and decades. And I think we have this belief from movies and television that it's like it's so close. But I think it's not. I think actually specialized AI does pretty much all we want. So the research is not going to be there in the same way. The near-term benefits of specialized AI just overwhelm. So, I think we largely stop there. Question about how should bank transactions be made reversible? I mean, they are, right? Bank transactions are reversible. That's one of the reasons that you don't want to use blockchain for anything financial, because it's not reversible. Reversibility is a feature. So yes, I mean, I don't know how long it should be. It depends on the system and how it works and the details. But it is be able to reverse a transaction is 100% one of the things you pay for in your commissions when you go through banks or credit cards or any of those systems. Right? The ability to say, that was a mistake, I didn't get my goods, I was defrauded, and then someone investigates, that is a feature, not a bug. I am running out of time and running out of steam. Let's see what's coming next. All right, this Stewart person asked a lot of questions, I'm telling you. Someone asked for a step-by-step approach to learn cryptography. Get a cryptography book and read it. What do you think about the future of blockchain? I have no idea. I just hope it dies. I mean, it has no actual value, but I mean, there's lots of things without value we're stuck with. So we can hope that it just goes away. Web 3.0, I think that's a blockchain thing, so I don't know. Someone asked about World War II complex crypto. I mean, it was broken, yes, weak algorithm, right? The Enigma was designed badly. The reflector looked like an innovation, but it was actually a bug because it meant no letter could encrypt to itself ever. That was a huge amount of information. And remember, it was broken through exhaustive search largely, right? The British invented the computer to break the Enigma and then hid the invention, and it was reinvented. So it was small key size and design errors. And yeah, we're way better at algorithms today. And I mean, yes, we're bad at choosing keys, but a lot of systems are designed to protect that. But yeah, if you choose a bad password, we're going to break your stuff. Again, brute force search. But in a lot of ways, we don't break cryptography by breaking cryptography. We break the implementation. We hack the computer, the code, the hardware, the network. Maybe I can use WhatsApp on my phone. It's end-to-end encrypted, and the way it's broken is not breaking WhatsApp by hacking my phone. Right? You get it out of the cache. So I mean, the math is now so good that everything else is more vulnerable. Somebody asked about new technology export controls when more quantum-based cryptography gets more commercially viable. No, export controls are over. World's too international. That worked in the 70s. That worked in the 80s. It did not work starting in the 90s with the rise of the internet, the popular internet. So no, we are not going back to export controls for cryptography. That just never going to happen. Question asking about restricting technology when the negative outweighs the positive. It feels like a good idea, doesn't it? Like we do that with all sorts of things. Handguns in every country except ours. We put restrictions on because the negative outweighs the positive. That feels important. Certainly say us about robust quantum cryptography. Again, I gave those two links further on. Go read them. And yes, it's a lot harder than people think. We are just beginning to understand the contours of non-von Neumann computing and sort of what a quantum computer can do. And it's going to take a couple of decades to figure that out. Right? So the threat model is still very poorly understood. The mathematics of post-quantum algorithms is very poorly understood. Like, expect this to shake out in the next couple of decades. It's going to take that long because the math is so new and the security is so weird. So it's going to take a while. Now, I don't think the current NIST standards are going to survive very long. Not because it's not good, because we just don't know enough. It's all very, very new and very weird. All right, then you're going to be my last question. Oh, good question. What's the succession plans for people's data when they die be? We are now, right? The internet pioneers are coming of an age where they're all thinking about this. And how do we give copies of our passwords to our next of kin? How do we have time vaults that open 10 years after we die? People are thinking about this. And I think there are going to be a slew of products that do this. If you are wealthy enough to have an attorney who handles your estate, you can give them a copy of your key. And in the US, it's protected through attorney-client privilege against discovery by the police. Right? And there are things we can do here. But yeah, definitely something to think about. And I think people are thinking about it more just because of the aging population that is computer literate. So I think it's kind of interesting. That's a fine question to end on.
Great. Thank you so much, Bruce. That was really enlightening.
Your people ask a lot of questions, I'm telling you.
Yeah, that was really impressive that you managed to get through all of the questions there.
I did not go through. I skipped a few of them. I don't know if you noticed. I mean, the people whose questions I skipped certainly noticed I skipped them.
That's right. Yeah, that's
sometimes if you write a long paragraph, it's just too much to read.
Do that.
That's a little question writing tip for you all.
Okay.
The two sentence questions get answered because they're easy.
Yeah. But this might be a Turing test. Maybe what you're facing is chat GPT.
Indeed, that's right. Nobody has their camera on. This could be a bunch of bots asking questions. I would never know.
That's right. I know for a fact that our
And I'm
students
going
are
to go to
some of-
ChatGPT like right now and say, ask Bruce Schneier questions in a seminar and see what it says. And actually, it knows who I am. ChatGPT will, if you say this in the style of Bruce Schneier, it'll do it. So I'm public enough that I personally am in its database. So we'll find out. I'll let you know if it's good.